Everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, Mark, like a job for me.
Where's the goodies?
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
I notice you've been making extensive use of the library database.
I was merely researching classical literature. I wanted to compare our major works with their counterparts in the other universe. I skimmed a few of the more celebrated narratives. The stories were similar in some respects, but their characters were weak and compassionate. With the exception of Shakespeare, of course. What I could tell, his plays were equally grim in both universes.
But we're not going to be grim here, and everything old is new again. Sans our usual co-host David Cohen, we are joined for week number 2 with John Billingsley, who we will know and recognize on television from at least 109 TV shows. That's not appearances, that's shows. There's many more appearances than that. And 48 movies. You might recognize him from
3 good ones.
For the ones that are not going to be spoofed on Mystery Science Theater 3000, right? In the future, we've got.
I am nothing but not spoofable, my friend.
We're with John Billingsley. Thank you for joining us. The Star Trek Enterprise, Dr. Pflox himself. Thank you again for holding over for yet another week.
Absolutely, and let me note that was a clip from the Mirror Universe show in which we are all bad and evil, lest people hear that and think, that must have been an odd show if he was talking like that. That was a one-off, Mirror Universe, bad us, mostly we were good.
Absolutely, but it was a two-parter, so it was a two-off, but we really did enjoy it.
That's true, that's true.
I have to tell you...
And if the show had gotten picked up for a 5th season, they were going to go back to the Mirror Universe quite a bit.
I heard that they were going to do like a 5-show arc or something of that nature, right?
Yeah.
It would have been fun. And they're also going to have, now this is really inside Star Trek Enterprise, for those listening in, we'll get off the topic in a moment, but there was a character that was an Andorian that they were going to bring on board for the 5th season as well, right?
Yeah, Jeff would have been made a regular. I mean, mind you, this was all sort of like, this is like making plans when the Titanic is sinking, Right. It's like, it's pretty easy to plan the barbecue next week when, you're going to survive, but we were done. It was a miracle we got a 3rd season, and a double miracle we got a 4th season.
Well, I would say, they were dripping a little bit, but I would say if people would give it a shot, especially the episodes, and there's others before this, but episodes, from season 3 on with Manny Cotto involved, and this gentleman he was involved at 24. He's involved in a new show called Next with small N-E and a large XT. Maybe, I know you're going to be, or have appeared on that, or
I'll give you a little bit of skinny. The Next is essentially an artificial intelligence generated by a brilliant computer runs amok and is out to stop folks, our heroes, from squelching its plan to overthrow humanity. I'm in flashback. Well, no, I guess I'm not in flashback. Spoiler alert, I'm the protagonist's ex-professor, and I meet a bad end fairly soon in the first episode.
Okay.
So no room for me to return, I suspect, unless it's in flashback.
And he did have you, though, come in. Well, I bet you they do that, but we'll see. In that show, let me just stick on that for a moment before I go to my next thought. That's coming out in 2020 at some point. Is that correct?
I think so. I mean, I don't... Yeah. If you're not actually a series regular or under contract, it's not like they stay in touch with you and keep you posted. So,
right.
And I don't tend to... follow it all that much. I kind of have been so busy doing the other stuff I do, the social justice, poverty stuff,
right,
that I'm very disconnected from the business these days. I still audition, I still work, I'm not retired, but I pay next to no attention.
Right.
So I'm not at all hep to what I'm in when it's airing, or whether shows I'm in, or even on the air anymore. I just don't know.
Right. Well, let's talk about, just for a moment, we'll dive in for our Star Trek fans, one more little aspect, because you say the show was sort of like a sinking ship. Well, if you're saying...
So was UPN, and I keep coming back to that because it wasn't... I'm not making a qualitative judgment. I thought there were some terrific episodes. I liked the cast a lot. I think it's hard to write 26 episodes of episodic television. Some were good, some were bad. I just think it was a function of Star Trek fatigue coupled with the death of UPN, and maybe to a certain extent Rick and Brannon had kind of worn out their welcome at Paramount, which happens.
Well, did that then permeate the set? Did it affect the performances at all, or no?
No, not at all. I mean, I think, as I say, when we looked at our ratings after year 2, any other show would have been canceled. UPN didn't have anything else.
Right.
So we came back for season 3, and that was for all of us like, oh my God, I can't believe we're coming back. I mean, I know you think Star Trek, you're going to get 7 seasons because that's the way it worked. But we were after Next Gen, there were 7 seasons of Deep Space, there were 7 seasons of Voyager. Deep Space and Voyager overlapped. There was a lot of Star Trek, and I think people were a little tired of it, and our show was kind of promoted as, we're going to reinvent Star Trek. It's going to be exciting and dynamic and new. Aspects of it were, but by and large, it wasn't offering something that was wildly unfamiliar, and so we didn't attract newcomers.
Right, and as evidence of that or support of that, another Star Trek show didn't appear until last year. So
yes, I used to joke that I was on the show that killed the franchise, which a lot of people poo-poo. But at the time, there was a question as to, geez, how long is it going to take for Star Trek to come back from this? Can they? And then the movies, of course, made a big difference.
If I had to give you an opinion, it would be Nemesis, if you ask me. That really did the series a bad turn, and it permeated everything else. Just the Star Trek name got it put in the mud, if you will, through that. But that's just my 2 cents.
It's funny. I mean, it's weird that when you think about what's so interesting about Star Trek, and it may be unique insofar as there's so many iterations and so many evolutions and so many... from comic books to cartoons to all the shows and the movies, every actual iteration of Star Trek is itself a different animal.
Right.
Different producers, different creators, different vision. It still works within the world of the franchise, but witness what's happening with Discovery and Picard. Everybody's got their own take on it, and you kind of have to. I think if you're a fan, you kind of have to say, okay, I'm gonna, the parameters are large enough to encompass a lot.
Right. And
certainly, if it's interesting, you go back and you look at 1966 when Star Trek started, and I think there was in the Great Society years a sense of we don't have to explore how we got to this era in which racial bigotry and intolerance and nationalism were put behind us. We can just assume that happened. Nowadays, the shows are all about, geez, how do we ever get beyond these things? And it's a fundamental cultural shift that Star Trek has to respond to.
Well, I'll tell you, the best episodes that I find in any and all Star Trek genre is when they visit a new culture, a new civilization that mirrors us in some way, that took a different turn, however they did it, and they do things in a different way, and you learn a lesson from that, a morality play. Is that the right way to go? Is that the wrong way to go? Should we fight a war? Would we just go into a booth and die that way? And
right. That was a good one. Yeah, it's funny. I'm the one, as an actor, the thing that always struck me is the episodes that are most successful are the ones that manage to involve the most number of people in the story, in the complication, because that's where the tension lies. Like, for me, the best episode of our show was one called Similitude in the 3rd season, where we had to decide whether to clone Trip, knowing that the clone would have a very limited lifespan, and we were eventually going to have to mine his DNA to keep the real Trip alive. And there was so much, and it was so rich, I thought, because everybody had very strong opinions and emotional reactions, and it kind of gave the show, which is what sometimes bugged me about Star Trek, it gave the show a certain life that sometimes I think Star Trek episodes lack.
Right.
Sometimes I feel they're a little emotionally sterile.
Well, when they pull, and I'm not against phasers and all the battles and all that.
Yeah,
but it's much more.
I'm
okay.
opposed to phasers, and I'm opposed to any episode that ends with 2 ships firing at each other.
Right, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I think that should be outlawed on Star Trek,
or at least minimized for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly. I couldn't agree more. And whenever I fired a phaser, they would have to say you don't have to do the recoil, and you don't have to go.
We have special effects for that.
I know they have special effects for that. It's like, well, but it doesn't do anything. I feel like I should do something.
Well, that's the thing. When there are lessons to be learned when you pull out the phaser and you go to violence and you've run out of ideas and all that. You could use it for a lesson like that. I have no problem with that kind of thing. But my point is, well, in similitude, just to finish that off, is that this being that was, or clone that was created, became sentient, if you will, and people had a relationship with that person.
Yeah, and why does that being's life have less value than the other being's life that its death is supposed to save? Because the mission is bigger. Because otherwise, we're not going to save the world. And so there's an element of self-sacrifice involved, which I think is also one of the things that, to me, always kind of ennobled Star Trek, is the idea that there are bigger things than you.
Right. And there's bigger things than us called commercial breaks. We'll be back right at this on Everything Old is New Again to continue talking all things pop culture with John Billingsley.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
This is Robert Picardo, the emergency medical hologram from the Federation Starship Voyager, and you are listening to Everything Old is New Again because you are smart.
What is that?
It won't bite. It's called a triple. It was extremely difficult to acquire. They're outlawed on most worlds.
Why? Is it dangerous?
Oh, far from it. All it's capable of doing, really, is eating and breeding. The problem is they breed quite prodigiously. The only thing that keeps their population in check is the abundance of reptiles on their homeworld. Are you feeling all right, Ensign?
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with that gentleman that fed a tribble to, for dinner, let's say.
Right. It's so funny to hear your, because, that was kind of not really exactly my voice, so it's always funny when I hear Dr. Pflox speak. I forgot that he had a Dr. Pflox voice.
Yes.
Which I couldn't even do anymore.
Really? How about that?
I probably could if I listened to it, but every now and again I go to a convention and somebody says, do Dr. Pflox. It's like, I don't have the vaguest idea.
It's maybe goes away with the prosthetic, I guess, right?
Every time we'd have like our summer break, I'd go back and I'd find the first episode or two was like, my voice is a little not under control because I can't quite. It had a very specific kind of lilt and timbre to it, and it's like like any time you're kind of using a dialect, it's like it's kind of wandering on me.
Right.
When I auditioned, they don't give you the whole script. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They didn't give me the whole script. I just had the sides for one scene, and it said, come in with a slight alien accent. I was like, all right, I don't know what that is. So I practiced a whole bunch of things with the missus, and then I eventually went in and I thought, maybe on his home planet he's a bird. So I punctuated my audition with repeated squawks. I just, la, 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 and I got the job, and no one told me. I was like, right up until the day we shot, it was like, am I a bird? Should I squawk? What do I do? You're not dressing me like a bird. I don't look like a bird, but I was hired squawking. So what do I do?
Well, how annoying would that have been down the line, though, huh?
Yeah, it might have been annoying. It might have been. I didn't squawk all the time. It was like the face, it was like the smile.
Right.
It was like, I don't know, are you looking for some kind of... Anyway, I squawked during the first run-through of the first scene, and I would have to use dirty words to tell you what the director said, but suffice it to say, I was informed that I was not to squawk. I am not a bird.
Well, again, it would have been nice if they would have told you. Now, we're talking about Star Trek Enterprise just for a moment here. I was at a convention. I met, very, very briefly in these conventions you meet, Scott Bakula. But before we were able to do so, we saw him do something that I thought was extraordinary. And what happens is, just for those that are not so familiar, you have an opportunity sometimes to do a meet and greet and take a photograph. It's not even a meet and greet; it's just a photograph. And so they rush. There's a lot of people online. They rush you, not rush, but you go in, take a picture,
rush you, no doubt,
exactly, and rush you out. So right before us was a child that appeared to have some sort of special need, and Scott Bakula took probably 10 minutes, which is probably 20 times the amount of time you normally would take. So put it in perspective, with this child and his family, and really made his day. You could tell, and he didn't have any obligation to do that. It sounds little when we talk about it on the radio, but when you're in that circumstance, he had no obligation to do that, and had pressure, in fact, not to do that. And
no, it's great. Here's the thing about Scott, and I've bumped into this. We talked in a previous 11-minute episode about working with different people in the business.
Right.
And the thing that always amazes me is that if you're on television, the guy who's number one on the call sheet, the lead, he sets the tone for the show.
Right.
If that guy is cranky, or if that guy's hard to talk to, or if that guy, in any way has attitude, it infects the entire production, and it becomes unpleasant to go to work. When number one is a Scott Bakula or a Mark Hamill, Mark Harmon. I'm sure Mark Hamill's lovely too, but Mark Harmon
right.
on NCIS.
Yep.
They set a tone of collegiality, of warmth. Scott and Mark would go around and introduce themselves to all of the extras. They knew every crew member's name.
Wow.
They knew the members of their family. They celebrated birthdays. They considered themselves to be the quarterback of the team, and it makes such a difference. And Scott is one of those guys that just walks the walk as a leader in our business in that respect.
And that's really obviously that's the way he is. I mean, it's not just put on. That's a real guy.
It's a great guy. I mean, it's funny because action. I don't know. My mother was a behavioral psychologist, and when you behave in a certain way, it becomes who you are.
Right. Well, it's a piece of advice my dad gave to me. I was upset and not happy in school at some point, and transitioned from one school to another, and he was like, "Look, just act as if you're happy. Smile. Enjoy yourself.
Let a smile be your umbrella."
Well, because guess what? Then other people reflect the smile back and the nice attitude back, and all of a sudden you become happy because they're happy, if that makes sense.
That's right. A gajillion pop songs have been written along a similar theme.
See?
And we hear it a bajillion times, but somehow it's hard to actually embrace it in our bones because it's easier to be cranky.
That's true, and not as much fun. I got news for you.
No, not as much fun.
Speaking about making people happy, let's just talk about the Hollywood Food Coalition for a moment here, and I'm going to give an idea. This is an organization that was established in '87. Since then, has given away 1.5 million meals for those in need, and there are certainly times that all of us have a tough time in life, and maybe someone there to pick you up a little bit for a week or two or a month, whatever it might be.
Because we have people. We have a no barriers thing. It's like we ask no questions or no forms. There's just stand in line. We give you a great meal. If you show up late before we've closed our doors, but we've stopped serving, we always have late plates put aside.
Nice.
We try and give away bag lunches. We give away shoes and socks and clothing and toiletry kits and blankets and backpacks and books. And we have a medical and a dental van that come once a week, a vision van that comes once a month. And we hook people up to a whole raft of other organizations in our community that help them with other things. We try and get people referred to doctors and mental health professionals and drug and alcohol rehabilitation programs. And the coolest thing that I think we have done over the arc of 33 years is because we need volunteers to come in every day and cook the meal, and we need another team of volunteers to come in the evening and serve the meal, and we need volunteers to pick up the food, and we need volunteers to distribute the food, and we're a volunteer board, is that thousands of people have volunteered. And it breaks down this artificial barrier that exists that leads people to think that people who are poor are different than they are.
Right, exactly. And certainly you all deserve respect, and that's exactly what you, I'm sure, provide when they appear as well. And I would suggest going to the website, HOFOCO.
Or to make it simpler,
yes.
HOFOCO. HOFOCO.org.
I hope that's simpler. That kind of works. Hollywood Food Coalition is the HO for Hollywood.
Coalition. Yes, it probably should be HOFUCO, but that was taken. So instead, HOFOCO.
All right, so just to make it simple, Hollywood is the HO, right? FO for food, CO for coalition.org. Yep. How about that? It's on the radio. It's got to kind of get to there. So that's something really. Take a look, and you could donate in many different forms and ways. And it's a worthwhile organization for sure to do that. Now, I know, and we don't have too much time, we're going to go a little bit into this next section as well, but I know, for some reason, you have approximately 15,000 books in your library.
Yep.
Please explain to us, everyone's asked you this question, I know the answer is you have not yet, but have you read all of them, and if not, why do you have so many books in your library?
One, I wanted to be a librarian when I was growing up. I loved libraries. I still love libraries. I think libraries should be supported in bigger and better ways in our country. And so for me, growing up, I always wanted to live in one myself. I wanted to be able to browse. I think when you're surrounded by books, you read more. They yell at you.
Yep.
It's like you see all these great books on your shelf, and you think, ooh, I want to read that. Ooh, I want to read that. Ooh, I want to read that. And you set aside time. And to my mind, there is nothing that civilizes a person. There's nothing that allows a person access to empathy and curiosity than books. I love my business. I love watching great television and great movies, but a book it has a different way of pulling you in and does different things to you because you're asked to visualize it all in your own brain. It is a different exercise of your mind muscles, and it is absolutely vital to your human development. So yes, I have probably 15,000 books. They're stacked in some instances to the ceiling, and in many instances they come out 6 shelves deep from the wall. So I have a very patient wife.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I love to read too, and we'll get into this because we're running out of time, but next section. But keeping of the book in a library is so interesting to me. I think it's such a great thing to do, to go back and revisit a book for a second time.
Absolutely. Vladimir Nabokov famously said, all good reading is rereading.
There you go, because you do miss a lot when you're reading the first time, and maybe you want to get through it fast because you're waiting for a bus or whatever you are, reading and distracted, whatever it might be, and or you just don't pick up everything the first time, especially something that's written well. You don't always pick it up the first time round.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm an actor, and so the thing is, if you're an actor, when you get a script, I mean, you have to read it and 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 read it for its nuances, and eventually, of course, to learn it.
Right.
And every reading, it gives you deeper insight into what that script, if it's any good, is attempting to do. I mean, I don't like reread a Perry Mason novel, twice. They're fun. They're flip, and you read them for fun. I think, a balanced diet of reading is sometimes you read Thomas Mann, sometimes you read Vladimir Nabokov, sometimes you read Agatha Christie.
Right.
Reading should be fun. I just find in my own life that I get a lot of enjoyment from reading things that challenge me, from histories, from books about the world we live in. And then sometimes it's like, I'm taking a little mind candy break, and I'm reading this great ripping yarn.
Right, exactly. And we're going to continue talking and find out what is fun to read for Dr. Pflox on Enterprise, and or more to the point, Mr. Billingsley himself here on Everything Old is New Again. Come on back.
It's been a long road getting from there.
Here with John Billingsley, and we're talking about the Hollywood Food Coalition. John, what is this?
Well, I'm the president of the board. We serve a hot, nutritious 5-course meal to hungry men, women, and children 7 nights a week, 365 days a year. Been doing it for 33 years. We distribute clothing and shoes and blankets and backpacks and you name it. And we help people access a huge array of other services from partner groups. And if you'd be interested in making a donation, hofoco.org, $3 buys a hungry person a great 5-course meal. hofoco.org.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything old is new again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hey, this is Dr. Peter Weller, a member of the major motion picture community and television community and the artist community, and now I'm the community of Everything Old is New Again. And I don't know, it's my 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, my 100th time on this show, but however many it is constantly a privilege and a thrill to be with Douglas and David on Everything Old is New Again.
There we are. We're back here with John Billingsley. It's a thrill to be with John from, many, many TV shows. Let me ask you a question. Does that representation from Peter Weller mean anything to you? Did you like that he said that he loves to be on this show? He just absolutely loves it.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm having a grand time. I'm always happy to come back. I will happily come back anytime.
How about that? That was my backwards way of asking.
I'm not sure I can top his encomiums, if that's what you're saying. I mean, I don't know. He's kind of outdone all of us in terms of adulation.
He has.
You paid him off, didn't you? What'd you do? What'd you give him? What'd you give Peter Weller?
I know what I did. I talked about other things than RoboCop, because it's enough with RoboCop.
That's the secret.
Because we like to get into other things, and he actually has a degree. He's a doctor now. I don't know if you're familiar.
I noticed that he said Dr. Peter Weller.
Yes, he went back to school later in life after RoboCop, and got a master's degree, a doctorate in Renaissance art history. Now, so we, believe it or not, on the radio spoke about art for quite a while.
Beautiful.
So we had some fun. And we've talked about a lot. He's been on about 11 times, so we had some fun with him. So we would love to have you back, yes, because there's so much to talk about. I want to dive into something a little different and talk about the books again. Now, to me, I'm going to throw a little something from my point of view and see if you can react to this and see what it does for you. First of all, one of the first things that grabbed my attention and authors were H.G. Wells and Jules Verne. No surprise to anybody listening to this show that I'm into the Star Trek and science fiction in general, but more science fiction with a meaning. And I thought that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, War of the Worlds, and some others had, for a kid that was 10, had 11, 12, whatever, had some great meaning, great adventure.
Did you read the Annihilation trilogy by any chance by Jeff Vandermeer?
I did not. I'm writing that down right now.
Okay, they made a movie out of the first one, which was okay, but the trilogy is really, really good, and he's a wonderful writer. Jeff Vandermeer.
And just generally speaking, what kind of a adventure
basically, a huge swath of Florida has been bizarrely cordoned off, and it appears to be undergoing some kind of strange transformation. Creatures evolving into other creatures, land terraforming itself. And for years, government studies have attempted to kind of penetrate this curtain, this mystical curtain, and every team they send comes back transformed in strange, odd ways, or doesn't come back at all. So the latest attempt to investigate, they send an all-female team across this border, and the 3 books are about what happens to them and what happens to the people back in the world trying to figure out what to do next.
Oh, that sounds great.
It's just great. N.K. Jemisin, do you know her?
No.
Oh, check her out. N.K. Jemisin, Jemisen. I mean, I read a lot of different things, and there's some amazing sci-fi and fantasy being written. I mean, I kind of read across all genres. I do want the writing to be good.
Right.
So I subscribe to the New York Times, of course, and the New York Times Book Review that comes every week, I think, is a great source of some of the best stuff coming out. They also put out every year the 100 best books of the year.
Okay.
Which is something I always recommend to people. You can download from the Internet going back 40 years, the 100 best books of the years. That would give you 4,000 great books.
There you
go out and find.
That I will do, although I will not be permitted to keep 4,000 in the house. But
I confess to being a lunatic. It is, everybody has addictions. I'm lucky that my addiction is not to heroin, gambling, or prostitution. I'm addicted to collecting books, and I'm addicted to reading.
Now, do you collect old books? Because I have a couple of old Gene Shepherds, if you remember him from the radio.
Yeah, no, you know who does, or who used to, is Ethan Phillips.
Okay.
He was actually a rare book collector. And the guy on Night Court is also going back. Not Harry Anderson, but the
John LaRoquette.
John LaRoquette,
right?
A book collector. I don't collect that. What I do like is runs of an author. So I want all of Faulkner's books, not first editions, but I want to be able, with some authors, to read their novels sequentially in the order in which they were written.
Right. Okay.
So I could, there are a lot of authors. I have all of Philip Roth. I have all of Faulkner. I have all of Nabokov. I have all of, yada, yada, yada.
How about,
I don't want to sound like a snob. I have all of Stephen King,
Right.
I mean, it's...
How about a Wilbur Smith, a little historical fiction about Egypt, and then he's got a whole series of the Courtney family from the 1600s till now.
I read one of his books, and I wasn't a huge fan, but it so much depends upon your mood.
Right.
And I love Mary Renault,
okay,
who I think is one of the great writers of the 20th century. She wrote a wonderful trilogy about Alexander the Great that I think is wonderful. The Persian Boy, the second one in the trilogy, I think is particularly marvelous, about Alexander the Great's expedition to conquer Persia, and his young slave boy who becomes maybe his lover. Wonderful book. I read a lot of history. A great book I read recently is a book called My Promised Land by Ari Shavit, which I think takes an incredibly nuanced view towards, it's called My Promised Land, The Triumph and Tragedy of Israel. I think it's one of the best books I've ever read, very even-handed about the complexities and the contradictions of the Israelite condition. I think it's marvelous.
Wow, okay, that's some great recommendations. I'm going to throw out just for comedy, which is very hard in a book to do, and that's why I mentioned there's a Gene Shepard. In God, was it?
In God We Trust, all others take cash.
Exactly. This is a work of art in terms of comedy, just fun stories.
He wrote the story that A Christmas Story was based on.
Sure did, and you can go to YouTube and listen to his old radio shows, and he just would present some of these short stories there.
Are you a P.G. Woodhouse fan?
Yes.
How about Make Way for Lucia? Do you know the Queen Lucia books by E.F. Benson?
That I don't. I'm writing some of these down.
You dig these. They're very witty. They're very sly. They were written in the 30s, and it's all about these two ladies who lunch, who have a long-running war of wits to try and be the queen doyenne of their small provincial English towns.
Oh, okay. I'm going into that. Let me throw a couple at you.
I could do this pretty much all day.
Well, we'll do it for another 3 more minutes. How about that? I'm going to throw a couple we've had on the show just for kicks, just to see if you want to take a chance with Nicholas Meyer, who, of course, was a director and writer of some of the movies.
7% Solution.
Yeah, he's got a new one, The Adventure of the Peculiar Protocols, which just came out.
I've read of it.
And I've just finished it, and it's fast reading, fun reading, but you can't put it down. He's got a little prose to him as well, and I really would suggest just for the fun. Some books you just for fun, and that's a really fun one. And I know that you might be a fan of. This is really out there. Are you a fan of The Godfather?
The movie, but not the book. That is one of the few movies that I think exceeded the quality of the book.
I agree. Now here, the gentleman, this is really bizarre, but it's really getting a great response from what I could see from when we put our shows on the podcast, and people are just talking about this and want to hear this interview over and over again. I interviewed Gianni Russo, who was the sister's husband in the movie The Godfather. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, the guy got beat up.
Yes,
by James Caan. Yeah, the guy who set him up.
Right, and I'm going to have to clip this in.
That's the guy. That's the guy. The cannolis. Take the cannolis. He's the guy who was strangled, wasn't he?
Yes, exactly. And his name is Gianni Russo, the actor, and he claims to have known Marilyn Monroe through the years and learned about the Kennedy assassination.
Oh no! Don't go there! Don't go there! Don't go there!
All I'm saying is,
here's a book. Here's a book I'm going to recommend to anybody who still believes that Kennedy was not assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. Right. It is a book by the guy who wrote. The guy who wrote the amazing book about the Manson trials, Helter Skelter, Vincent Bugliosi.
Yes.
Vincent Bugliosi wrote a 1,500-page takedown of all of the conspiracy theories surrounding the Kennedy assassination. It is amazing.
I have read, actually. Yes, it really
is. Did you read it?
Yes, I did.
I mean, you can't consider it to be a legit thing after reading that book.
Correct. But if you want to put a smile on your face, read this one, Hollywood Godfather, by Gianni Russo. You'll get a kick, I'm telling you.
I don't know. It drives me nuts because I think, one of the things in this world we live in which there's all this passed around as if it's real.
Right.
Just because somebody believes something does not make it true.
Right. But he met a lot of Hollywood stars and all this, and he just goes on and on. I don't know how much you can believe of what he said, but it's if you take it for what it is. Another one, you really got to take it with a grain of salt. But the other one, it's almost like fiction, but they're great fictional stories. Rod Serling, I know you were a fan of. No? Twilight Zone?
Rod Serling was my father's college roommate.
Get out of here, really?
Yeah, briefly. And he was a sleepwalker.
Well, you know what? I hate to do this. We're going to have to take a break for a moment. We're going to get back and continue talking about Rod Serling and a book that I would recommend right after this.
Cliffhanger. Hi, I'm John Billingsley, and I help run the Hollywood Food Coalition. We serve a hot, nutritious 5-course meal to hungry men, women, and children 7 nights a week, 365 days a year. We distribute clothing, shoes, blankets, backpacks, you name it. We help people access a huge array of other services from partner groups. Please join us by making a donation to the Hollywood Food Coalition through our website, hofoco.org, HOFOCO.org. $3 buys a hungry person a great 5-course meal.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hey, it's Dr. Peter Weller. I'm here with my friends David Cohen and Douglas Viviani on Everything Old is New Again, one of my favorite shows, and I may not be the most interesting man in the world, but I'm one of them.
Hi, this is Walter Koenig, and you're listening to Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
There we go, and we're back here with John Billingsley.
Now, I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna give you one more book recommendation, and then I'll let you segue out of this, because probably those people who aren't voracious readers are listening to this and screaming, "Talk about television! Talk about something else!" How to Live Safely in a Science Fiction Universe.
Okay.
By a guy named Charles Yu, Y-U. It's a book about a time machine repairman, and it's about his complicated relationship with his father. It's wonderful.
All right, I'm into it. One final one. I'm just gonna. We've had Nicholas Parisi on the show. Rod Serling, his life, work, and imagination. This guy researched Rod Serling like crazy. It's a tremendous book behind the scenes of all the different adventures that Rod Serling went on and had the fights he had to go through and what he did in his life and why he was doing what he did. But he was your dad's college roommate.
He was my dad's college roommate. And apparently he was a sleepwalker. And I can't remember. It was I don't know, Oberlin, Marietta. I can't. Some place in the Midwest. My dad went to college when he got out of the service after the end of the Second World War. But apparently, because Rod Serling was a sleepwalker, he'd be kind of coming in and out at all hours. And my father said, "I can't sleep," so he transferred.
Okay. But did you pick up any stories of what he was like, or I don't know what?
No, because my father was sort of my father is he's like 12 episodes all by himself. My father, who was gay, had a fascinating life, a closeted gay man growing up in the 50s, coming of age in the 50s, 60s, married happily for 42 years. My mom.
Wow.
It's a miracle I'm here. Put it that way.
How about that?
But he was really kind of like blind to pop culture. He'd watch a little television. He liked to read. He read the paper. He listened to classical music. I don't think he really kind of grokked. I said, like, Rod Serling? Said, yeah. So what, he became somebody? It's like, yeah. Did you ever hear the Twilight Zone? The Twilight Zone. No, what zone is that? Is that what do you mean? The Twilight Zone? That's at twilight. What is that?
Not our market audience.
No, not at all.
No.
My father, who for some reason, I don't know why, he's still alive, 92, unfortunately, has dementia, but throughout my career, if he ever saw something in the newspaper that concerned a show I was in, he would usually cut out the clippings if they were bad and send them to me.
Thanks, Dad.
The San Diego Union Tribune kind of, said Enterprise, PU. I get this clipping in the mail with a little note attached from my father saying, "Well, this is what they thought." Like, well, thanks for taking the time, Dad. I really appreciate that.
How about what you think, Dad? He'd say, "I don't know what channel it's on," right?
Yeah, no. It's a strange and eccentric man, my father.
Now, we just heard a little bit there from Peter Weller, who's a friend of our show. We've talked about that. He's directed quite a number of Hawaii Five-O's. I don't think he directed. I know he did not direct the one that you were on.
He did not direct the one I was on.
But Carol Burnett was on that show.
Yes, she was on the episode right before I appeared, so I was hearing a lot of Carol Burnett's stories.
Okay.
The week I was on the set. So, I had a very small part in that. I mean, the thing is that, on crime shows, you're the victim, you're the killer, or you're a red herring.
Right.
So I was a red herring.
Well, let me go this way. If, excluding Enterprise, if I was to say to you, listen, tell me one or two episodes of something that you were in that you really think that it was worthwhile for me to check into.
The Nine, unfortunately, a show. I've been a regular on 4 shows, but 3 of them came and went pretty quickly. Right. There was a show called The Nine that was short-lived on ABC, 2006 maybe. That people thought was going to be great. I thought it was great. It was about a group of people who were held captive in a bank robbery gone awry, and it kind of did this interesting flash forward and backward thing where half the episode was what happened hour by hour in the captive situation, and you knew that some people lived and some people died, but you didn't quite know what happened. And then half of it flashed forward to the aftermath and how people were putting their lives back together. And I got to play this kind of sad sack guy, Egan Foote, who inadvertently somehow manages to help save the day, and so he goes from being a doofus and a loser to a hero, and how that changes his life. And that was so much fun, and touched on so much about what to me is interesting about humanity, our capacity to change and grow.
Right.
And it kind of broke my heart that it got canceled. Ty McBride was on it, Kim Raver, Scotty Wolf, Tim Daly. It had a great cast.
What a shame. 2006, 2007, you were in 13 episodes. So I think you could find some of those. I've seen some of them on YouTube. I don't know, but it might be worth a while. Called The Nine, correct?
The Nine, yeah, hard to find. Beyond that, it's hard to say. The years kind of blur your memory a little bit. I loved it being in Out of Time, which is just a romp, a kind of an old B picture, but it was a lot of fun. I was Denzel's best friend.
Right.
Fans of True Blood, I wasn't a huge fan of True Blood.
Right.
But those fans who liked True Blood, they saw a lot of me because I was pretty much naked the whole second season. I participated in a season-long orgy that was engineered by the villainess of that season.
All right. Well, there's something to tune into.
Yeah, there's something to tune into. Talk about a face for radio. I had a body for radio. So,
how about Kiefer Sutherland on 24? He seems very serious.
Yeah, I didn't really meet him. I mean, I was blown up.
Right.
So the only scene I had was he bursts in the room. I look at him and I say, "I'm sorry," and I blow myself up.
Right.
So that was it.
Exactly.
In that brief moment when our eyes locked, there was cinema magic.
There you go. And the Orville. People love the Orville these days.
Oh yeah. Well, that was fun because I got to work with Bob Picardo.
Right.
I got to torture him and his family. I got to dip his hand in scalding soup. Spoiler alert.
How about that?
And I love Bob. And also one of my dearest friends, Molly Hagan, played Bob's wife, and she's also a stalwart at the Hollywood Food Coalition, as is my wife, by the way, Bonita Friederisi, who I really should plug. I can't believe I haven't plugged her. She was the general on Chuck.
Yep.
For those of you who liked Chuck, General Beckman. And we've worked together a number of times down the year, and she really helps run the Hollywood Food Coalition. So
that's great.
She's a doll and a princess.
And we have talked about it, but just since you mentioned it, I wanted to just say that if you want to get involved, take a look what this is all about. See the model and help, which is always nice to help those who are helping others. HOFOCO, or how do we say this?
HOFOCO. I try and say it with a kind of like a ho-ho-ho feeling. HOFOCO.org.
All right.
Yeah.
You can get involved there, and I think it's a great idea to support something of that nature.
And because each time we mention it, I try and say something new about it. I'll say one of the other things I think is cool, because I, as an actor, used to spend time on sets, and they served these amazing meals, but they have to order basically 1.5 meals for everybody, so they have a lot of leftover food. And it's amazing food. If you've ever been to a set or a TV show, the food they serve is like, wow, incredible.
And if you ever watch Chopped, I mean, they have some of these people that cook.
Yeah. So, but you'd see the caterers after the meal service just throw out like the huge steam trays full of great vegetables and pasta and protein. So we started rescuing on sets, and one of the things we're trying to do is to wake the Hollywood community up to the necessity of not wasting food. And I think that's a lot of what the work is business by business, sphere by sphere, community by community. What can different communities do to save and rescue and distribute food?
And the food that's being cooked, though, is also repurposed with, like I said about Chopped, these chefs that you employ make a beautiful-looking meal. If you go on that website, this is really good-looking stuff.
Yeah, everybody has a choice of casserole. So as they go through the line, there's always a vegetarian, and there's always a protein-centric casserole, and then there's usually a third that can go either way. So we really believe in giving people a choice, just to be able to say, I'd like a little bit of that. No, I don't like that. I don't like Brussels sprouts. A lot of the model you get in your head of a food kitchen is you sit down and you're plunked down with a bowl of spaghetti and meatballs, and that's it's better than nothing. But the idea of actually giving people some reflection back of their dignity and their worth and their ability to kind of make a choice in their lives, I think that's sort of what we kind of believe in.
Right, which is something that we all can get behind. We only have a minute left, so I want to say and take a moment to say thank you, John Billingsley, for taking spending 2 shows with us here at Everything Old is New Again. We would love to have you back down the line. Yes,
love to come back.
Good. I'm taping this, and it's going to be broadcast, so you're going to be held to that now.
You got it.
and really looking forward to your next projects and helping as much as
I'm
we
on
can.
Homecoming. The Julia Roberts was on it last season. That'll be coming on in May. And I was recently devoured by rats in a television movie on Hulu called Book of Blood. And Brandon Braga directed it.
How about that? We're going to have to tune into that. Has that aired yet? Do you know? Not sure.
No, neither of those two things have aired.
Oh, good. So something to look forward to. I'm looking
forward to.
Great. Okay. Well, we're going to keep an eye on those. We will speak of them off the air. I should say with David Cohen and myself on another show. And we usually do like a TV guide every so often because it doesn't exist anymore. So we try to point people in the right direction for a new and interesting show. So maybe one or two of those would be on the list. Let's hope. I'm sure they will be. We're going to take a look at them and have some fun with entertainment, pop culture next week. Come on back. You never know what's going to be, but we thank again John Billingsley for being and spending time with us. Thank you and enjoy the day.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll be back next week, same time, same channel.
Ciao, Bella.
You've been listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's pop culture entertainment talk show. Find us on the web at everythingoldisnewagain.biz. That's .biz.
See you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.